Did you know that a lot of people deal with unresolved trauma playing out in our present lives and we have no idea, and especially men? How could that be that we could go through something that's traumatic and have no idea? Let me help you see why. So first, we're not talking about coming back from war or getting beaten or sexually assaulted growing up. Not like this. This is what we tend to see with traditional PTSD. We're talking about adverse childhood experiences. These can basically be any type of predictable events that disrupted the safety and security of our home growing up. What we thought about, self being safe at home. This could be untreated mental health issues, addiction, family members going in and out of jail, not knowing when they're going to be back, domestic violence, constant moving, sometimes like move every 2 years, those families, or even like a messy divorce and kids getting in the middle of all that. Call these little T traumas for kids. These really unpredictable events that are scary or hurt, and you really don't know what to expect and don't know if you're going to feel safe and how to deal with your environment when it's not feeling reliable. And when one of these happen, maybe it's not too big of a deal, but when a lot happen on top of each other, they can compound and they can really add up. These adverse childhood experiences work off of something that a lot of us men are left with as a result of how we're raised as boys by traditional manhood. Because while we're being taught that, it's be all end all to be strong, successful, independent, tough, all that good hunter warrior stuff, at the same time as little boys, as little human beings who are juveniles, we need space to express our fears and insecurities openly, to learn how to do that with our trusted family members, our trusted loved ones, our most intimate personal relationships. But the more that traditional manhood is playing out in the family culture that we're brought up in, the more we get blocked from doing that. This creates attachment injuries where we don't expect to be able to feel safe while we're openly expressing fears and pains, and usually are accustomed to going off by ourselves and dealing with that alone. When these two things happen at the same time, which is much more common for boys, especially because this traditional man stuff, that we're gonna have more of these types of attachment injuries that make it really hard for us to be vulnerable with other people and trust other people. And even though it's not like I was beaten, it's not like I'm covered in scars, I'm obviously traumatized, but if enough of what is going on growing up feels unpredictable and scary enough, while we don't feel safe going through that stuff and learning how to ground our stuff in the strength and confidence of our community to unconditionally love us, what can play out regardless is another type of trauma called complex trauma. And where it is different than traditional post-traumatic stress disorder is complex trauma can play off of all these different types of adverse childhood experiences, these different types of perceptions or stimuli that will throw off a trauma response, and not always as strong as what you would see in PTSD acutely, but they tend to be peppered through a lot of different interactions, almost like a shotgun round from farther away versus like a one big cut with a samurai sword like you would see with PTSD. What is still typical of these trauma responses are a tendency to go towards intrusive symptoms or more towards avoidant symptoms. The intrusive symptoms are elevated heart rate, obsessive thoughts, really hyper-focusing on things. The avoidant symptoms are more social isolation, blunted affect or low emotional experiencing, and tending to engage in a lot of escapism, just trying to kind of numb out in order to get a hold on these trauma responses. So I hope this has been a helpful explanation about how these two areas of life tend to work back and forth for a lot of men when we have unresolved trauma playing out and don't even know what to report because we don't see ourselves covered in scars and we didn't imagine ourselves going through traumatic stuff, as they would say. However, these certain types of experiences, when combined with these certain aspects of traditional manhood when growing up that result in attachment injury, can really get us stuck when it comes to learning how to lean into our loved ones and really develop the strength and vulnerable bonds with our community.